Glenn and Martha Mosley, our guests, renowned theologian Glenn Mosley, a marriage and family counselor, minister, Martha Mosley, and you've both been involved in Unity for some time. Where were you before this calling, before Vancouver?
We were ministers in St. Louis, Missouri.
Who decides that?
It's a combination of the church and the ministers. In our case, we had some people who called us and asked us if we would be interested in applying for Vancouver. There's an application process and a clearinghouse that gets the ministers who are looking together with the churches who are seeking.
In a certain amount of time in a certain place, and then they take you away and put you somewhere else, or how does it work?
Well, we were not looking. Usually those calls are made to people who are looking, and it wasn't a great number of people, but it was people who made us aware. We didn't even know the vacancy existed in Vancouver. So we thought and prayed about it for about 4 months before we decided we would actually apply. So.
And you trust your inner guide. Who do you trust? It's one thing to pray. It's another thing to get the message, as you know.
Well, one of the things that we do is meditate. That's one of the reasons Buddhists really like our services. And we do that instead of talking to God and telling God what we want or need, as though God was our servant. We go with open minds, hands, and hearts and say, you tell me what I need to be doing, period. And then shut up.
And let it happen.
And let it happen.
So it's almost like I'm receiving, I'm ready for something good to happen, or maybe not so good, because I think we learn from the not so good.
Of course we do. We learn more from our mistakes.
Darn, it's always been so, hasn't it?
Yes.
So where do you fit with, say, the fundamentalist end, the Pentecostal and the literal interpretation of the Bible? Is it on the other end of the spectrum, or how does that work? The Bible itself as a holy book.
The early Christians numbered many denominations. Before the year of 200, there were 400 denominations. Not one church, but 400 churches. And it was greatly altered in the 3rd century. So when you ask about the Bible, you almost have to ask about what period of time are we talking about the Bible? The one that is listed as the King James Version or some of the more modern versions or translations? Or are we talking about all of the scriptures of the world?
Right.
And we like to take an overview and learn from anything and everything that we can.
Okay, it may be my kind of thing. I don't know, but I always thought as a young girl in Sunday school that Jonah really wasn't swallowed by the whale. It was a fable, right? But Jonah didn't like plop in the belly of the whale, right. But it did mean something. And I was more comfortable with that. Or does the wine turn into the blood of Christ? Not really, but it's symbolic.
Exactly.
All the way.
All the way.
Yes. And
then you're not a Catholic.
No, no, and we honor absolutely every step of the way anybody takes. We're fine with people believing whatever they believe, being where they are in houses of worship, or not. We actually do believe that people are spiritual naturally, not necessarily religious naturally.
Right.
The difference is you don't have to learn spirituality. You are, and you will ultimately develop an awareness of that. Religion, you have to learn from somebody else, and that's the difference.
And there's
we don't
fear
necessarily
in it at
consider
times,
ourselves,
and shame and things I don't like.
Right.
Sometimes there's fear. Fear God, fear this, and be done with you sinners.
Yes.
And for us, we honor the people who are following those paths because we believe that this is where they need to be at this time. However, there's no fear in unity. God is love. God is all good all the time.
Right. I know in the Catechism it said you should fear, love, and trust in God, and I always thought fear.
Yeah.
I like the love and trust part.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, if you translate that to awe instead of fear, then it's a little more acceptable.
And in fact, the King James Version, when the word fear was written, meant respect.
It did.
Yes.
See, you know a lot. That's why you're a theologian. But it's true, because to just say, I don't believe in that and I don't believe in this and I follow this, and to not know enough to really make a decision is interesting. A blind follower of any faith.
Yes. And there are many professional religionists who really like to use the Bible to frighten people. In a sense, that causes them, they think at least, that fear causes them to want to become a part of a person who says, I hold out hope for you. And we absolutely dispel that in every way we possibly can.
Where did you meet Maya Angelou? I'm such an admirer of her.
She actually attends Unity in New York.
She does. Is it linked to the Agape movement at all?
No.
The Agape celebrations in Los Angeles, and all the movie stars go. That's
We're
how I know.
like-minded.
Yeah, yes.
And other people go too, but like-minded, because Agape has this, it sounds to me like a similar.
It's similar.
It is. And she would go there if she were there, and no doubt does when she visits. But she is a member of Unity New York.
Okay, and the late Ted Kennedy? It said you worked with him.
That was a bit of an overstatement. I met him and talked with him at length. The irony of it, when I met him, was I was waiting for her. I was in a New England city, I think maybe Portland, Maine, and she was going to meet me, and we were both traveling, and we had a few days we could take a vacation. Right. So we met there in the fall, and while I was there, airplane came in, and there was a whole crowd of people all around, men, women, waving banners and so on. Right. And off comes Ted Kennedy. I was standing off to one side waiting for her plane to come in. I didn't know who was coming until I saw him. He walked over to me and shook his hands, and he said, I'm Ted Kennedy. What's your name?
Well,
and
that's why he was such a good senator. Apparently he also picked up his phone. Like if you called Ted Kennedy, the people didn't pick it up. He picked it up.
He picked it up. And I think later I thought he really was being a really good one. I was the only one standing minding my own business. Everybody else was waving banners. And so he said, I've got them.
Of course. And Prince Philip? They've given your bio to us, of course, as they always do. They're new in town, right? They've been here only 10 days.
And he and his son, at least, are Unity students in London.
Really?
Yes.
How interesting.
But I was at the Palace for a different reason. I'm a member of the Templeton Foundation, and that's the study of science and religion. The major program is science and religion pursuits. And there's a worldwide honor award of $1 million+ each year. And it's presented by Prince Philip.
Really?
So I went there and met him. Now, I had more time with Margaret Thatcher, but on similar occasions.
You had more time with Margaret Thatcher?
Than I did with Prince Philip, yes.
You did? That's interesting.
She's
was
one
she
of the
in
warmest
Unity?
People. She knew a lot about it.
She would embrace it.
She knew a lot about it. She didn't commit. She didn't tell me she did, and I didn't ask her. But he told me that he knew that Unity had just, the church in London, main church in London, had just moved. He said, in fact, I think they're right up the street on Palace Road.
Sure. But the Iron Lady was just a label.
I'm sorry?
The Iron Lady was just a label. Which is good.
It was a label, but it describes portions of her character.
Yeah,
does it?
It did.
Okay. So on Christmas Eve at Unity, a service of celebration and song and
music and worship and the opportunity to experience that true Christmas spirit in the heart of each person.
How great. Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Glenn Mosley and Martha Mosley, Unity of Vancouver.